There's something powerful about a man who asks the right question at the right moment, not to impress, not to seek approval, but to reveal depth, his own and hers. Because here's the truth. Most men speak to fill silence, but a rare few. They use silence to create depth. And when they finally speak, when they ask, it's not to get something, it's to awaken something. That's the kind of man a woman remembers. That's the kind of man she feels drawn to, even if she can't explain why. And it doesn't start with what you own or how you look. It starts with how you see, how you observe, how you lead a moment, not with flash, but with stillness. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and the words you choose, the questions you ask, they show her exactly what your soul is made of. This video is about that. It's not another list of pickup lines or tricks. It's about 7 questions that invite something real, something emotional, something unforgettable, each one crafted not for the masses, but for the man who is done chasing. The man who understands that attraction is not a game, it's a current. And if you are steady enough, still enough, it flows to you. So I want you to imagine this. You're sitting across from her. The air between you is light but charged. She's laughing. You're calm, there's no script, but then you lean in just slightly. Your voice lowers, and you ask something that no one's ever asked her before. Not because you want something from her, but because you're not afraid of who she is. And even less afraid of who you are. That moment, that's the trigger. That's where attraction takes root far beyond words, beyond logic, beyond strategy. And today, you're going to learn how to lead her there. Not by trying harder, but by showing up with presence and letting your calm become the gravity in the room. So take a breath. Sit with this. Because once you understand the power of these questions, you won't need to chase attention again. It will find you, naturally, silently, undeniably. Let's begin. Part 1. The mirror question. What type of man captures your attention without even trying? You've met her, maybe more than once. And in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't her smile. It wasn't her style. It was the quiet awareness that something in the air changed when you walked in. Now pause here. Was it confidence, presence, power? No, it was congruence. You didn't try, you were simply rooted. Still, and she felt that. This first question is about inviting her into that same space. Not to win her over, not to impress her, but to give her the space to speak into her own desires, and for you to see if you belong there. What kind of man captures your attention without even trying? That's not small talk. That's a compass. Because her answer reveals what moves her, what stills her, what awakens her, and more importantly, what role you naturally play in her internal story. This question is powerful not because of what she says, but because of what it draws out. Most men skip this. They go straight for performance, a joke, a story, a flex, but you're not there to entertain. You're there to understand. You're not selling yourself, you're observing. Not to please, but to discern. As Epictetus said, it is not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. And when she responds to your question, that's exactly what you're listening for. Not the event, but the judgment. The emotional coding behind the words. Here's what that looks like in real life. She might say, a man who walks into the room like he already belongs there. That's your cue, not to imitate, but to ask yourself, do I already walk into rooms like that? Not with arrogance, but with presence, or she might say, someone who's curious. Who asks real questions? Good. That means you don't need to perform. You just need to listen. And let your interest be unhurried. And maybe she says something that doesn't align with who you are. Maybe she craves wild chaos, the bad boy thrill, the reckless flame. Then you have your answer too, not to change, but to walk away. With clarity and calm. This is the power of a stoic man. You don't adapt yourself to her fantasies. You offer what's real, and if it fits, it fits. If not, you remain unmoved, because attraction without alignment is noise, and you don't live in noise anymore. You live in signal of who you are, what you stand for, and what kind of connection you're available for. This question is not about her. It's about you. You see, when she answers, she's not just describing her ideal man. She's painting a portrait of what lights her up. And in that moment, you get to ask, is that who I am? By nature, not by effort, because attraction that lasts is never born from trying. It comes from living in alignment with your essence. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." And in asking this question, you're not avoiding friction, you're embracing it. The friction of truth, of contrast, of being seen. So next time you're across from her, wait for the moment when the laughter softens, when the energy shifts. Then lean in just a little, look her in the eyes and ask, what kind of man captures your attention without even trying? Then say nothing. Just observe, because the real answer isn't in her words, it's in her eyes. It's in her breath, it's in the way she feels you listening. And if you're calm enough, present enough, you'll hear what most men never do, not her preference, but her longing. And that is where real attraction begins. Part 2. The doorway to trust. When do you feel safest opening up to someone? Let's slow down for a moment. Because this isn't one you rush into. It's not for the first 5 minutes of playful banter. It's not for small talk or clever comebacks. This question is sacred because when you ask a woman when she feels safe to open up, what you're really asking is, what does her heart require to feel seen? And the truth is, most men never ask that. They try to impress her, dazzle her, win her over with charm or charisma. But they forget the one thing that matters most, how she feels when she's around you. Not what she thinks, not what she wants, but what she feels. And feelings, real ones, only emerge in the presence of safety. Emotional safety is not built through performance. It's built through stillness, through witnessing without judgment. When do you feel safe to open up? Let those words sink in. Because when you ask that gently, without pressure, without agenda, she pauses, she reflects. And in that moment, you're not just some guy trying to be liked. You've become a mirror, a space, a presence. And that changes everything. Seneca once wrote, "No one can lead a happy life if he thinks only of himself and turns everything to his own purposes. You must live for others if you wish to live for yourself." Now you might wonder, what does that have to do with attraction? Everything. Because true attraction doesn't come from control. It comes from the quiet strength of a man who is other-aware. A man who can hold space, not just for her beauty or her story, but for her vulnerability. Let me tell you something most men will never understand. Every woman you'll meet has been interrupted in some way. By someone who didn't listen, by someone who judged too quickly, by someone who made her feel like her feelings were too much. But you're not here to rush the process. You're here to understand the architecture of her trust. And when you ask this question, gently, calmly, with soft eye contact, you signal something rare. You're not just attracted to her, you respect her inner world. And that, my friend, is when the walls begin to lower. Not because you pushed them down, but because she chose to let you in. Here's the Stoic principle underneath all of this. As Epictetus reminds us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. A Stoic doesn't rush in to be heard. He creates space for the other to be felt. And in romance, that is everything. Because when a woman feels deeply heard, when she senses you're not trying to fix her, control her, or even decode her, but rather just hold space for her, she associates that emotional ease with you. That's how attraction becomes internalized, not as adrenaline, but as peace. And there is nothing more magnetic than a man who brings peace in a world of noise. So next time you're speaking with her, don't just look for the perfect moment to sound smart. Look for the quiet moment. The pause, the subtle drop in her voice, the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. That's when you ask, when do you feel safest opening up to someone? Then just be still. Let her step into that space. Let her discover herself while she speaks. And let her feel deep in her bones that she doesn't need to perform to be accepted. That is the moment she begins to feel connected to you, not because of what you said, but because of what you allowed. And that, brother, is the essence of Stoic presence. Unmoved, observant, reverent, you don't chase the story. You become the space where the story unfolds, quietly, powerfully, naturally. Part 3, the alignment test. What do you value most in a relationship? You've been told to listen to her heart, but you also need to listen to her compass. Because the truth is, attraction without alignment is short-lived. It burns hot, but fades fast. What lasts is shared values. Shared vision, shared direction. That's why this question matters so much. What do you value most in a relationship? It sounds simple, but it's not. It's a question that peels back layers. It asks her to stop performing, to get honest, to reach past chemistry and into clarity. Because if you're walking north and she's walking east, no amount of flirting, no level of passion will keep the connection alive without deep effort and constant tension. This is where most men go blind. They're so pulled by the feeling, by the moment, they forget to ask, does her direction match mine? But you're not that man. You are grounded enough to look past the surface. You are steady enough to not confuse desire with compatibility. You're wise enough to ask this question and strong enough to walk away if the answer doesn't align. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." And that's the standard you live by now, in how you speak, in what you allow, in who you open your soul to. So what does this question reveal? It reveals whether she values trust or drama, whether she honors honesty or lives through validation, whether love for her is a shared path or just a temporary escape. You might ask, and she answers, "I value loyalty, even in hard seasons." That tells you something rare, that she doesn't run at the first sign of discomfort, that she's built for something deeper. Or maybe she says, "Fun. I just want a relationship to feel good." and listen. There's nothing wrong with that. Unless you're looking for growth, unless you're building something real. Then her answer becomes your answer, not because she's wrong, but because you're clear. This is emotional discipline. This is what separates a stoic man from a man who begs for affection. He doesn't just fall for a pretty face. He looks for shared rhythm, shared integrity, shared foundation. And when he hears misalignment, he doesn't argue, he doesn't convince, he steps back with grace. Because you never need to force a bond that wasn't built to last. Not when you know your own values, not when you stand firm in what you're building. There's a moment in every meaningful connection where clarity must replace chemistry. And this is that moment. You ask with gentleness, but with spine. What do you value most in a relationship? Then you listen, not for what you want to hear, but for what's real. Seneca reminds us, it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. And yes, it takes courage to ask this. To potentially hear that you're not what she's looking for. But even more than that, it takes inner strength to hear that truth and not flinch. Because the man who dares to ask this question is a man who values his energy, his time, his future, more than just fleeting moments of connection. He knows that a woman's beauty might catch his eye, but only her values will hold his soul. So when you're ready, ask her, softly, calmly, and listen, not just with ears, but with standards. Because if she doesn't speak your language of truth, then no chemistry is worth the chaos. And when you do meet the one who does, you'll know, because her answer won't just match your expectations. It will mirror your mission, and that's when attraction becomes something more, not just a spark, but a shared flame, steady, strong, aligned. Part 4. The Emotional Mirror. What's something you wish more men understood emotionally? Let's be honest. There are things she'll never say unless she feels seen. Not because she doesn't want to, but because too many men have made her feel like her emotions are a burden. That's why this question matters. What's something you wish more men understood emotionally? It's not just a question, it's a mirror, one that reflects the parts of her that are rarely heard, even more rarely respected. And when you ask it, not out of strategy, but from genuine curiosity, you open a door that most men never even knock on. Because what you're really saying is this: I'm here, I'm listening, and I'm not afraid of your depth. Most guys avoid conversations like this. They want to keep it light, fun, surface level, but that's not you. Because surface might get attention, but only depth builds trust. And trust, that's where the real attraction grows. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This question humbles you. It strips away assumptions. It asks you to step back from your own understanding and walk into hers. Let me paint the moment. You're sitting across from her. The night has softened. There's a flicker of silence. Then, with steady tone and grounded energy, you ask, what's something you wish more men understood emotionally? At first, she might pause, not because she's unsure, but because she's surprised someone actually cares to ask. And when she begins to speak, that's when you become something different. Not another man who sees her as a puzzle to solve, but a witness, a sanctuary. She may say, "I wish men understood that sometimes I don't want a solution. I just want to be held in the moment." Or, "I wish they knew that my silence doesn't mean I'm fine. It means I don't feel safe enough to speak." These aren't complaints, they're invitations, windows into the way her nervous system responds to connection. And if you're present, if you're steady, you become the very thing she's always hoped to find. But here's the Stoic twist. You don't ask this question to perform empathy. You ask to learn, not to fix, not to please, but to understand, deeply and calmly, what she needs in order to trust again. Because a Stoic man isn't just rational, he is emotionally disciplined. And emotional discipline means you can hold someone's truth without letting it shake your own. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." And this is how you live that truth. By holding space for her softness without collapsing into insecurity. By receiving her story without needing to make it about you. This question is not about her feelings alone. It's a reflection of your capacity, your ability to lead with patience, to listen without interruption, to stand calmly, even when what she shares is heavy. Because the stronger your frame, the safer she feels to be fully herself. And here's the quiet magic. When you ask this question, you trigger something deeper than interest. You create resonance. That soul-level recognition that says, this man doesn't just want me. He understands me. That's not attraction. That's devotion in seed form. So the next time you feel the moment, don't be afraid of going deeper. Breathe, look her in the eyes, and ask, what's something you wish more men understood emotionally? Then do what most never will. Be still. Let the truth land. Let it shape you. Not into what she wants, but into someone who no longer runs from emotional depth. That's when she stops wondering if you're like the rest and starts seeing you as the rare man she didn't know she was waiting for. Part 5. The confidence key. What kind of confidence absolutely captivates you? There's a silence that speaks louder than words. A kind of quiet self-assurance that doesn't need to announce itself because it's already felt, and whether she realizes it or not, that's what most women are drawn to, not noise. Not show, but a grounded presence that simply is. This question you're about to ask isn't about bravado. It's not fishing for compliments. It's an invitation for her to define what truly moves her, beyond appearances, beyond performance. What kind of confidence absolutely captivates you? You don't ask this to become her idea of a man. You ask this to discover what confidence feels like in her world, what it looks like through her lens. And as she answers, you don't rush to mimic or match. You listen, you absorb, and you ask yourself, does her truth meet mine? Because real confidence isn't reactive, it's reflective. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. So why should her opinion of confidence matter to you?" Because she's not describing just any man. She's describing the energy she trusts, the presence she can feel herself soften into. And if you carry that energy, it's not to prove something, it's to live from it, unshaken, unfiltered. Let me show you something most men miss. When you ask this question and she says, "I love a man who's confident enough to be kind," what she's really telling you is that arrogance turns her off, that your ability to lead with gentleness, not weakness, is rare to her. Or maybe she says, "I'm drawn to someone who's sure of himself but doesn't need to dominate a room." That's code for emotional containment. The kind of man who owns his energy but doesn't impose it. That's the art. You're not adapting to her preference. You're checking in with who you already are. Are you confident because you know yourself? or because you need to be seen. A Stoic man isn't loud, but he is unmistakable, not because he pushes his presence, but because his presence is anchored. Here's the paradox of attraction. You captivate her the most, not when you try to impress, but when you remain rooted while asking something real, when you're able to hold a question like this and not flinch. What kind of confidence absolutely captivates you? Ask it when the space feels right. When she's opened a little, when trust has started to form, because this question can deepen the connection, if you're stable enough to receive whatever comes. And remember this, you're not her entertainer, you're not her project, you're not even her fantasy. You are a man of direction, a man who knows that his confidence is not a performance. It's the quiet agreement he makes with himself every day, to show up, to stand still, to speak from truth. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity." For he is not permitted to prove himself, and this is your proving ground, not to her, to yourself. Because if you can sit calmly in front of a beautiful woman, ask a question that reveals her desires, and not feel the need to become what she wants, then you've already won. You've stepped beyond the boy who performs, into the man who simply is. And when she feels that kind of certainty, the kind that isn't loud, isn't fragile, and doesn't ask for validation, she won't forget it. Not because of what you said, but because of how you stayed grounded while she spoke. That's the confidence she'll remember. The kind that doesn't chase, the kind that doesn't crumble, the kind that leads silently, boldly, naturally. Part 6. The Honest Disruptor. What's something men do that secretly turns you off, even if they think it's attractive? There's a kind of wisdom that only comes when you're willing to ask the uncomfortable questions, not to corner, not to challenge, but to invite truth. And this one, it might sting, but it's one of the most revealing questions you'll ever ask. What's something men do that secretly turns you off, even if they think it's attractive? Why does this matter? Because you're not asking to criticize other men, you're asking to understand the silent space between what she says she wants and what she actually feels repelled by. This question cuts through the noise. It disrupts the act. And when asked from a place of calm, curious strength, it reveals more than her pet peeves. It reveals her boundaries, her blind spots, her hidden disappointments. And that's where real connection is born, not in agreement, but in mutual clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth which never harmed anyone." The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. This question is not about her answer. It's about your ability to receive it without flinching, to hold space for critique not as threat, but as information. Let's break this down. Maybe she says, "I hate when men try too hard to appear mysterious. It just comes off as emotionally unavailable." Now, you might have thought pulling back makes you seem more powerful, but to her it feels like distance, not presence. And in that moment, if you're honest, you'll feel something shift inside you. Or maybe she says, "When a guy brags about his success nonstop, it makes me feel like he's hiding something." And that might be something you've done, maybe even unknowingly. Not because you're insecure, but because no one ever told you that humility leaves a louder echo than hype. This is the moment where the Stoic man rises, because he's not reactive. He listens. He adjusts, not to please, but to refine. He sees feedback not as rejection, but as fuel. Seneca once said, "Only the educated are free," and emotional education begins the moment you're humble enough to learn from what most men avoid. When you ask her this question, you're giving her permission to be unfiltered. You're showing her you're not fragile, that you don't crumble when confronted with truth, that you're not afraid of hearing the hard things. Because here's the truth, what turns her off isn't always loud or obvious. It's subtle, a tone, a posture, a pattern of behavior that no one calls out until she finally walks away. But when she does speak it, and you don't defend yourself, when you simply say, "That's interesting, I appreciate you being honest with me," you instantly separate yourself from the crowd. Not because you're perfect, but because you're present and emotionally grounded enough to grow. Let me be real with you. There will be things she says that don't sit well, things that touch your ego, things that bring a little heat to your chest. That's okay, that's the cost of clarity. And clarity is worth far more than comfort, because the man who fears discomfort becomes a performer, but the man who embraces it becomes a leader. So the next time you're sharing a moment of trust, when the vibe is open and the tension has softened, ask her, what's something men do that secretly turns you off, even if they think it's attractive? Then let her speak. Let her trust you with her frustration. And when she's done, don't joke it away. Don't fix it. Don't rush to defend. Just hold it. Let it shape your awareness, because sometimes the thing that sets you apart isn't what you do. It's what you stop doing. And that's where your power begins, not in the impression you make, but in the integrity you live. Part 7, the embodied invitation. Coffee or wine? On the surface, it's the simplest question in the world. 2 words, 2 beverages, but beneath that simplicity lies a subtle power, a doorway from conversation into experience. Ask it lightly, yet deliberately. So tell me, coffee or wine, and what makes you choose it? Because the real intent here isn't to debate espresso versus Cabernet. It's to read the rhythm she craves and to let your next move feel effortlessly natural. Coffee whispers slow-burning intimacy. It says quiet mornings, fingers curled around a warm mug, soft light pouring through cafe windows while conversation unspools unhurried. If that's what makes her eyes glow, you know the atmosphere she feels safest in. You can picture the wooden table, the subtle hum of grinders. 2 hearts learning each other's cadence across shared stillness. Wine, on the other hand, breathes in color and dusk. It speaks of laughter that rolls over a candlelit table, of subtle boldness, a willingness to taste, to linger, to let evening become adventure. If that's her answer, your invitation shifts. Think terrace lights flickering above, chairs pulled closer, music in the background, but the real melody woven between your voices. And here's where the Stoic mindset takes center stage. You're not asking to coerce her schedule. You're revealing preference, so the encounter aligns with the momentum of her spirit. Because a Stoic doesn't manipulate events, he shapes conditions, then accepts whatever unfolds. Epictetus put it plainly, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. So you embody calm by giving her an easy either-or. You embody clarity by listening to the why behind her choice. And you embody leadership by translating those details into a concrete plan, without fuss, without hesitation. Let me anchor this with a quick story. I have a friend, quiet, thoughtful, who once asked a woman this very question at the end of a bookstore conversation. She chose coffee. Instead of proposing a generic chain, he smiled and said, I know a place down the street where the beans come from a family farm in Guatemala. They hand brew each cup. You'll taste the story, she agreed. They sat for 3 hours, no pitch, no brandishing of achievements. Just steam rising between them in a slow unfurling of trust. 2 years later, they still returned to that cafe on rainy Saturdays, Because that single question anchored a memory bigger than words. You can do the same. Ask, listen, act, and notice. None of it requires you to be louder, richer, or funnier than anyone else. It requires presence, selection, follow through. Marcus Aurelius reminds you, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. If you're nervous about suggesting a meetup, this question dissolves the barrier. Her answer becomes the way. Coffee? Great. Saturday morning, 10 a.m., corner table by the window. Wine? Perfect. Thursday, rooftop bar at 7, watching the city lights bloom. No chasing, no convincing, just moving with the information she freely offered. A practical note on delivery. Wait until the conversation has a relaxed pulse. You've already shared laughter or a moment of honest reflection. She feels your composure. Then smile, slight tilt of the head, and drop the question. Let it hover. Don't rush to fill the silence. Her choice will surface, and when it does, respond with warm certainty. I like that. I know just the spot. Short. Grounded, decisive. Remember, this isn't about the drink. It's about transitioning from ideas into embodied reality. It's easy to hide behind digital messages, endless theorizing, and hypothetical sparks. But a Stoic man lives in the physical world. He breathes, moves, shows up. That's where attraction crystallizes, when words gain weight in shared air. Seneca offers the final nudge. While we deliberate how to begin, it becomes too late to act. So dare to begin simply, smoothly, now. Because every great connection ultimately asks for one courageous moment. The moment you turn philosophy into motion. And sometimes all it takes is 5 syllables, coffee or wine. Conclusion: attraction is not a game. It's a mirror. If you've come this far, you already know something most men will never understand. That deep attraction isn't created by chasing. It's created by presence. By stillness. By a man who listens not to respond, but to reveal. These 7 questions aren't tricks. They're tools. Each one is a doorway, not into her heart, but into your own strength. Because the real power is not in the question. It's in how you ask it, how you carry yourself before the words, and how you stay rooted after the answer. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You don't need to be smoother. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to memorize lines or rehearse confidence. You just need to return to yourself, to embody clarity. To become a man who leads with calm, who observes with intention, and who asks not to impress, but to connect. Because when you lead with presence, she doesn't just hear your words, she feels seen. And when a woman feels truly seen, without being pursued or performed for, that's when she begins to lean in. That's when she starts to wonder, who is this man? You are that man. Now here's what I want you to do. If something in this message resonated with you, drop this in the comments right now. I lead with calm presence. Let it be your signal. Your standard. Your reminder that attraction begins within. And if you're serious about mastering the Stoic mindset in every area of your life, your confidence, your relationships, your discipline, then make sure to subscribe to the Stoic Philosophy. Because this journey isn't just about becoming more attractive, it's about becoming unshakable. And if that's what you're ready for, I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay grounded, stay aware, stay stoic.